Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, my diehard CataList fans, for coming to the product update. I'm Carol Gordon, project manager for the CataList project at Booknet. There may be some of you here that are unfamiliar with the project if you're just coming to get a sense of what's happening on CataList, if you're not a CataList user. But it is the online cataloging and order management system that Booknet manages. So I'm pretty excited to be up here today to tell you about what's new in CataList since our last update. We usually do one every year at Tech Forum. And about some of the features and improvements that we're looking ahead at for the next year. So if you haven't been on the CataList site in a while and remember it this way, it was this way not all that long ago, we did spend a fair amount of time and effort in the last year on a site redesign project. And so some of the driving factors in that redesign push were to make it easier to find specific publishers' catalogs, to make better available use of all the space in the viewer's viewport for desktop and laptop users. We were losing the margins. And to optimize the display for tablet users. So on our new homepage, I'm just going to kind of overview some of the major changes that we made. If you do want a little bit more detail about, sort of your uses for if you're a library or a sales rep or a retailer, there are some webinars that I will make sure we've just ran them in the last couple of weeks for each different type that walks through all of the functionality in the new system. And I'll make sure that those links are all up in our help documentation, which can be just accessed through the help menu. So our publisher list moves to an alphabetical listing in the left sidebar. In the old system, it used to be sort of a rotating who's published catalogs most recently, but that made it difficult to find what you were looking for. So for publishers that have that are top-level distributors that distribute multiple clients, or for publishing groups that have a number of publishers underneath, they're all nested in this list. And there is a filtering tool at the top which just allows you to start typing in the name of the publisher that you're looking for, and it will automatically reduce the list to show you matches as you're typing. So front and center in the new homepage on the main section, we've added a new release carousel. So this will put up releases that are coming out this week, so you get an ever-changing view of what's hitting right now. And immediately below that section, a really useful tool, which is a one-click new release by month report. So that report returns a search results list, which you can then export from the system. You can send those titles to a custom catalog, or you can use the refine tools that are in the search menu to refine the list that you have gotten back. For publishers, we've given you another option to see only your titles and only your catalogs in this main center section. And you simply do that by just clicking on your publisher name on the tabs at the top. So selecting the tab filters all the data in that main section, so you're seeing all your books that are releasing this week, all your own most recent catalogs. But when you are also using those new release one-click monthly reports, it will automatically return the monthly reports for your own titles. So it's going to only return the titles that are associated with your account. When you're logged in as a publisher, you'll also always see your own publisher name at the top of the list in the sidebar. So you can go to your publisher page, get all your catalogs there, and you don't have to worry about scrolling through the list or looking for the name. For all signed-in users, we've also added in the right sidebar, or if you're viewing on a tablet, the right sidebar content is below the main section, so scroll down, a list of all your recently viewed catalogs. So it will show up to the 10 most recent catalogs that you've viewed. So whether it's a custom catalog or a seasonal, you'll get those recent ones there. So if you want to pick up something where you left off, or if there's something that you're always going to see, you have your catalogs that you're selling right now, you'll be able to access those directly from the home page. Inside catalogs, the system is now reflowing the number of titles per row in that thumbnail view, so according to your viewing screen width. And we've also pinned the navigation bar here. So as you're scrolling through the catalog, You can access other catalog views, the export options, the find within catalog search feature without having to scroll back up to the top of the page. Our scroll view remains fairly similar to the previous version of CataList. So again, we've pinned the navigation bar. One other thing that I wanted to point out, it's kind of it's minor, but a useful change, is in that bar when you're logged into the system, the export button is now available in all the catalog views. So in the previous version of CataList, if you wanted to export to Excel or to a text file, or if you're signed in as a library, if you wanted to export to a MARC record version of the catalog, you had to go to the grid view. So now you can access that from any of the views of the catalog and pull down the version that you want. So speaking of the grid view, the most significant change on the grid view page is that we've added the horizontal scrolling, similar to what you have in SalesData if you've got access to that. So you can actually just easily scroll across your, if you've got an extended view of the grid. And if one of these views is your favorite, in the old system, our default was always the thumbnail view. If you wanted to go to scroll view or a different one, you had to go through thumbnail view, load that page, and then go to the other version that you wanted to look at. So what you can do now in my page is set a preference for your favorite. So by default, everyone is still set to the thumbnail view, but you can set in your preferred catalog view a different option. So whenever you're in CataList, if you click on a catalog from your catalogs list here on my page, from the home page, from a publisher page, what that's going to do is take you first to the view that you have selected here. You can still access the other views of the catalog, of course, using those navigation buttons, but your preference is the view that you'll always see up first. So other things in the last year, so we've also introduced a request from publisher feature. So what this does is this allows publishers to enable an ARC request form that displays to libraries, retail staff. You have some limited options to limit who can see them, and I'll show you how to set it up in a minute. So I'm just going to point out the README button. So it will appear next to titles where there is an advanced reading option available. So we still maintain our link to NetGalley. If NetGalley has an item that's available for request on their site, then we will continue to link to their request page from this button. And if the publisher has enabled the direct requests, then we display that option here as well. So clicking on that request from publisher option opens this request form. So it allows your would-be readers to explain who they are and why you might want to share an advanced copy with them. And we do have a number of librarians, for example, who are requesting reading copies to support their voting for the Lone Stars program. And so they can indicate here if they're participating in that program. Submitting the request form creates a request email that goes to the contact that a publisher sets up for the ARC management. So if you are a publisher and you want to enable this feature, what you're going to do is click on the gears setting at the top right, the gears icon, and select Settings. In the Settings menu, there is a tab for reading copies. If you're only seeing personal settings here, then this is a feature that's set up, that's managed by, you need at least, I think, account manager access. So if you don't have the access you need, you can contact us, and we'll let you know who your account manager is in your account. So reading copies, to set them up, you're going to just click on the tab, and when you click, your default is set to no. When you click yes, it opens these options. So you can set some limits on which titles are allowed to be requested. So it's limited automatically to forthcoming titles only. So once a title hits pub date, the request from publisher option will disappear automatically. You don't need to do anything to manage that. If, for example, though, you only provide ARCs on fiction, you can select only the fiction option and deselect the other top-level categories. And you can also choose by clicking on each requester type. So if you only want to enable it for retailers and libraries, you can do that. You can also, and then you set up, you provide in the email box an address where those requests will go to. So it can be the same person if one person manages all of your ARC requests, or if you've got different reps that manage those requests in different ways, you can put different people here. So for example, all of the library requests can go to the library rep if that's what you want to do. And the most recent feature that we just rolled out in February is the inline integration of sales data and numbers directly into the CataList pages. So I have a whole separate session to talk about that at the end of this one, so I'll save all of my details for that one in a few minutes. Any questions so far about the changes that we've already put up, or we'll just go ahead to the preview? Great. Okay. So we have a couple of minutes to look at some of the things that we're working through now and into the summer. And the first one is some improved drop-in management. So we talk to users pretty regularly. We have our advisory group that helps us prioritize topics, features for future releases. And if there is one major cross-industry headache that we hear about with discussions with everyone, with reps, with retailers, sales ops staff, librarians, is the endless chasing of the drop-in title. So what we're working on right now is a system that will allow publishers to flag those drop-in titles at the title level a little bit more easily, and then we can take those and report on them a little bit more effectively in CataList. So what we want to do is be able to report similar to what's on the homepage now, but a section for drop-ins that will tell you what's been added most recently, and then you be able to use those month-by-month single-click reports to pull a list of drop-ins month-by-month. So the same filtering options if you're a publisher, so if you're on your publisher tab and you're pulling the drop-ins that are just for your publisher. So we're pretty excited about that, so probably look for that to be available sometime in the summer. The Wordstock export, we're in the final stages of this direct Wordstock integration. So we've given them some test files, they've successfully loaded them, and they're in the process of building the file pickup mechanism that will enable that full integration. So this will have some additional field support for title level fields and order level fields that will support the Wordstock integration more completely. And so if you are using the Wordstock point of sale yourself, or if you have clients who are using it, watch the CataList monthly newsletter and the announcements based on the homepage for updates on our go live date. It's a little bit in Wordstock's hands right now. Or just let us know directly if you're interested, and we can just notify you when that's ready to go and get you set up. If you are using a different point of sale system, once this one is done, we'll be looking to do more. So put your point of sale vendor in touch with us. All we really need is the file requirements that they need, and then we can take it from there. So we are also adding a few more reports. So this is also in that settings menu. One of the tabs there is reports. So the two new ones that we are working on at the moment are a breakdown for publishers of views on titles and catalogs in CataList. So it's an analytics report. And we wanted to report those by market segment. So you'll be able to see where, say, traffic is being generated. This mockup is actually missing some segments. That's therefore the not final. But because we want to be able to show, as well as the retailer and library and buyer views. We want to be able to also show publisher views, sales agent views, so you can get a sense of usage inside your own company and, like if your reps are using it when they're selling in. So we expect to do more with analytics in the future as well, but we wanted to just prioritize making this kind of essential data available sooner. And we do have more to come, but some I just don't have slides to show yet. So some of the things that we are also working on, and we are meeting with our advisory group next month to review some of this work that's in development now, and prioritize some of the remaining feature requests. So we are working on, I can kind of talk a little informally about them. We're working on improvements to the notes functionality. So we're out in the field right now talking to users about how they're using notes, all the ways they use it, and with the goal of improving the notes entry and display and the sharing tools for notes. PDF creation and download improvements. So in last year's customer satisfaction survey, that was the item that by far generated the most comments and feature suggestions. So we've started doing some research on that already, and we have those upgrades slated for later in the year. So there will be some improvements to the creation and download management, and also some customization options, so you can have a little bit more options around what gets pulled into those PDFs. And one other feature that is currently on the table is the ability for sales reps to add their own comps directly. So with the addition of more integrated sales data, the need for Canadian rep-generated comparables has really kind of come into focus. So that is definitely one that we are working on that's come up as a real priority. So to keep up with the changes and get tips on using some of the new features, you can sign up for the CataList Newsletter. We send them out about monthly. We try not to overwhelm you, but it is good information for the new stuff that's coming out. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about sales data. So we're going to take a step back here and look a little more in depth at the recent feature. So this was just released in February. And the goal was to further integrate the sales data numbers into CataList for those retailers who are providing point of sale data in, and for the sales reps, and even the library systems that are subscribing to the system. So I think most people here in this room, for sure, you're our diehard fans, are familiar with BookNet's sales data system. It's a Canadian sales tracking reporting system collecting weekly point of sales data from over 2,000 retail outlets across Canada and covering an estimated 85% of the Canadian trade print book market. From the very first day that CataList went live, we have always had some access in the system to pull sales data reports for the comparable titles. So you could push a button, sales data report, view sales data report, and get this report that would give you the week-by-week sales for the first 13 weeks for all of the comps, a sum of the first 13 weeks, and the lifetime sales number. And it was all good information, available at the click of a button, but with some obvious room for improvement. So it required you to run another page load, and depending on your connection and the number of titles that you were trying to work through, could add up to be a pretty significant amount of time. We were also limited on this report to showing publishers only the all markets number. So when the real value is in being able to see the numbers from retailers who had agreed to share direct sales numbers directly. So those were our goals. Setting out to do this integration was to improve the usability by reducing the number of clicks, to improve the usefulness of the data by adding in the ability for the reps to select additional markets, and at the same time to maintain performance of page loads with the addition of the new data calls to pull more data into each page and retrieve that sales data information. And so the result is on our title detail page, you can see the new comparable titles table layout. And so if you are a sales data subscriber, or a data provider, when you're logged into CataList, you'll automatically see those first 13-week sales summaries and the lifetime sales for the all markets aggregate here. So in this particular case that we're looking at, it's a library subscriber, and they only have access to the all markets data set at this point. So I can see how the sales performance is in general and the market as a whole on these publisher-supplied comparables. For library accounts and retailers as well, if I have a title that I feel is a more apt comparison for my particular situation, I can also click on that Add a Best Comp button and add another comparable title row into the table, and CataList will pull back the all market data and the sales data summaries from the all market for me on the comp that I think is best. If you're a retailer who's providing data, you get a slightly different view just by default. So in addition to the all market summaries, you'll also see the summary data for your own store. So in some cases, we have retailers that have multi-store locations or multi-store scenarios. So what you typically see in the summary will be the all for your account. But that is something that we have control over on our end, on the sales data side. So if there is a different view that makes sense for your account, we can make that change. All we need to is just get in touch with us. We'll walk you through the options of what's available. So the retailers, as I mentioned before, also have the option to add a best comp for their account. And so the sales data summaries will be pulled back for the all market and for the store on those best comp titles. Lastly, so for the publishers, by default when you log in, you're again going to see the all markets data. And you see that as soon as you sign in. The option now that you have is to select one additional market at a time and see that data displayed in the grid. So if you click on the Select a Market drop-down, you can select from the retailers that are available to you. So if you're wondering how to get access to the retailer level data, that is set up for publishers on the sales data side, and what you need is permission from the retailer themselves. So I think Monique is going to speak a little bit about retailer level data access in her presentation in a few minutes as well. So once you've made a selection, the new market is added to the comp title table. So an important thing to note is that if you've selected a market, that date of first sale column is important. The date of first sale for all of the 13-week totals is based on the market that you selected. So what that means is that if the retailer did not have a sale for the comp title in the first 2 weeks that it was in the market, so the all market date had sales 2 weeks prior, all of the sums for the first 13 weeks will be calculated from the retailer's date of first sale. So you're looking at the same set of 13 weeks, whether it's the retailer or the all market. Lifetime totals, of course, though, are lifetime. They are not affected by the date of first sale. So as you move through a catalog to other titles, your selection is remembered within your session, so you don't need to reselect it every time you go to the next page. It'll automatically pull the data for the retailer that you're working with. If you wanted to hide that retailer market selection, you can select a different market. You can just go in and click the box, select a different market. You can return to the select a market default, just clear it out, or you can end the session by logging out. So this is a good place to put the little requisite reminder that sales data is confidential, so you do have to be cautious if you're using this as a presentation tool. All of the sales data terms, conditions apply, so that is your reminder to just be aware of that. And other catalog views, the other place where we've integrated sales data is in the scroll view. So in the scroll view for catalogs, we're displaying the lifetime numbers. So if you have the comp title section open, you'll automatically see those lifetime numbers appearing. So we've opted to limit to the display to display those lifetime numbers only and not the 13-week summaries in this location. And we've done that because we wanted to maintain the page load speed. So particularly, we have a lot of users that set the scroll view to show 100 titles at a time, and some of those titles have 10 to 15 comps each. So in order to keep that running quickly, we've opted to just show the lifetime numbers. However, publishers, you can still look at the lifetime for the all market and for your market, for an extra market as well. You can also set and change your market from this page view. And so I'm going to look at some quick troubleshooting tips that you might come across as you're looking at SalesData and CataList. So if you are not seeing sales data at all, there's a couple of things that you can check. So make sure that you are logged in. It's pretty simple. Sometimes if your session is timed out, you can just log in again. If you are logged in and you're expecting to see data, you can check on the SalesData website if your access is working. And if there's an issue, you'll get some feedback in your login saying that there's an issue. And if there is an issue with your access to SalesData, you can get in touch with the SalesData team to get your access restored. If you're seeing sales data returning, but not for the market views, or only you're seeing it in some columns, there's a couple of different scenarios. So a lot of data systems are pulling in related products, which is where we get our comps, if you're sending them in via Onyx. And a lot of that's just pulled automatically based on algorithms. And so sometimes what you'll see, especially with series that are releasing, one a month kind of thing, is that sometimes the pub date is in the future on the comps, so logically you won't see any sales. So pub date's one place to check. Our second row here displays sales for the all market, but not for the retailer selection. So just a reminder that you can only see the retailer level data on your own titles, and that's managed by the watch list in SalesData. So if you're not seeing retailer data, you can have a look for, you can check and see if your watch list is an issue. Row 3 has zeros in the retailer column. If you are seeing a zero in the retailer column, that means yes, you do have access to see this in this retailer, but they didn't report any sales. So it may be they didn't carry that comp, but it may also be that your comp might either predate sales data tracking, or it may predate the retailer's participation. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. And row 4 here is another all blank scenario. In this case, if you look at the format column, it's an ebook. So this is something else we see sometimes with the algorithms, is that ebooks are provided as comps. So SalesData doesn't track the ebook sales, so that would be expected even if it is a book that you publish or distribute. And so if you come across watch list problems, again, those can be reported to the SalesData team. And the last thing that I wanted to just say is in some cases you will see an ISBN and maybe even sales, but no biblio data. So if you see that, one thing to remember is that BiblioShare is our source for all data, including the comp titles. So there are about 2.4 million records in BiblioShare right now, but this item may not be one of them. So you may see SalesData has biblio data. They're sourcing from a different place. They're sourcing from Bowker, so but we can't use that data in CataList. If it's a comp that has just been added to the CataList system, it may just not be pulled over from BiblioShare yet. We run that process nightly to update data and pull over anything that we're missing, so you may see it update in the next day. If you do have publishers, if you're representing, if you're a sales agent or something like that, you're representing multiple publishers, and you're seeing that some particular publishers are always missing, we'd be happy to get them set up with submitting data into BiblioShare. It's free for them to do so. Just put them in touch with us and we'll do our best to get them submitting. And so if you have other questions, either about the SalesData or CataList, if you're not sure if it's a CataList, it's in CataList, but it's a SalesData question, doesn't matter. Just send to either one of our teams. We talk to each other all the time. We're happy to forward the questions around and get you the answers that you need.